It is another victory Thursday for the Chicago Bears, the now 3-7 Chicago Bears. You put some respect on their name as they beat the 1-8 Carolina Panthers 16-13 on Jeff Bezos' Amazon. Thank you, Al Michaels, for putting us all to sleep. Thank you, Kirk Herbstreit, for humoring Al Michaels. And thank you, Jason Kelsey, for bringing some sexy to the booth. We are here on the Sports Cubicle, breaking it down on Mike Mercado, the marvelous one, Dan Marver, on location, here to break down the Chicago Bears victory on Thursday night. And all kidding aside, there was a lot to like and a lot to ignore on this Bears victory. Really fast on the ignore part, Tyson Bagent, 20 for 33, 162 yards. Shout out to Deontay Foreman with 21 carries, 80 yards, and a touchdown. DJ Moore making plays, Cole Kmet making plays, Taylor Scott was out there. And more than anything, I want to give a shout out to the man, the unit, the new highly paid Bears frontman on defense, Montez Sweat, who was a menace. And also prayers up for Bryce Young, because that team is a hot mess, a must win for the Chicago Bears. Matt Eberflus was going to get fired if they lost on Thursday night. And now you see them win a game, have a long time off before they play Detroit. You will get Justin Fields back. You will answer some questions, and you help yourself in draft positioning. Marvelous. This is a game where I thought you can find things to pick that you can enjoy, even if you're a Bajan hater or lover, things you can find to critique and to give them some praise for. But regardless, it was a boring game that the Bears needed to win, and they found a way to win. Your thoughts on the Thursday night performance?
Well, first of all, did you happen to see the national ratings on the game?
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. This is what we're going to say, Marvelous. You and I talked about this weeks ago. This is why they never flex the Chicago Bears out of prime time. Doesn't matter the record. Doesn't matter if it's the 45th quarterback in 7 seasons. The Bears and Bears fans flock to TV.
Yeah, well, I was worried that if they lost, they would have a Patty Driscoll moment. George Dallas replaced himself with Patty Driscoll and then took the job back. 50s. But honestly, I was wrong. Bajan's career will be 2-2, not 1-2, and I think this is it. But now obviously the plot thickens with them having the first and maybe second draft pick, and the best players being quarterbacks. Will they trade it? Will they take a quarterback? Will they give up on Fields? There's a lot of thinking to do about it. In this game itself, there were things to like. You mentioned them. Kmet doing well, and DJ Moore doing well, and then the defense did a pretty good job. 16-13 was the score, and so now they've matched last year's win total. And they have a lot of divisional opponents coming up. Detroit, Minnesota. They have Detroit again, and they play Cleveland down the road. So this is going to be a real important stretch for Fields, for Mr. Fields, because if he doesn't perform better, I think they will go in a different direction, because it doesn't look like so far that he's the man. And so he's got to really step up his game. I mean, his passing stats are not great. I mean, obviously his elusiveness as a runner is a very important thing, and that's what they like about him. But the key is winning the game. So I think the defense has been shored up a bit, and the offensive line look pretty decent. I mean, they were opening the holes for Foreman, and so all in all against Carolina. But all in all, it was a game that gave you some feelings of positiveness, if there's such a word, going into the 10-day gap before they play in Detroit. So we'll see. And they have Minnesota. These are 2 important games for the divisional and for Mr. Fields, I would say.
I think you bring up some great points. I think there's been games where we've seen Darnell Wright, Tevin Jenkins ball out. Like, I do think there's some really good on this Bears offensive line. I think the thing Justin Fields is playing for right now is either the 5th-year option or to be a starter on another team. And I do think that if we were to see what Luke Getsy was doing with Tyson Bagent during, let's say, the Saints game or during the Raiders game with Justin, I think the Bears would have won a few more games. And honestly, I think Justin Fields with the Bears beats New Orleans. And then they're going to be in an interesting spot, Marvelous. I don't think Carolina is going to win another game or 2. I think this was one of those games Carolina could maybe sneak a win if they were going to pad that record and they lost that opportunity. So I think the Bears are going to be fine when it comes to having a pick in the top 3. The real question is, what do you do with your pick? I do think the Bears are going to win another game or two. I do think there's a possibility they end up with 5 wins, 6 wins. You talk about what makes Justin Fields special. It's the fact that he is special on what he does. All he needs to do is hit one big play with his arm. Everything else is gravy on top, right? Because we know how special he is doing everything else. So I think there comes that for the Bears where they're going to play themselves out of the top 5 with 2 picks. They had the smartness and the awareness to take a team like Carolina, who is going to destroy the development of Bryce Young, and take advantage of them. So I think you're 100% right. After these 10 days, and then you have these games going into your bye week, we're going to learn a lot about this coaching staff, how flexible they are. I also want to say this. While I think they should get fired, I thought they could have gotten fired on Friday after the win against Carolina. It's in play that Matt Eberflus and Luke Getsy don't go anywhere. It's very much in play that they don't get fired, especially what we're saying happens where they win a couple games by accident and Justin Fields kind of plays okay. And they don't necessarily have their choice of Caleb Williams or a Drake May, right? Maybe they're out of that. Maybe it comes down to they can only get Marvin Harrison and they can get a defensive end, somebody like that. So all of this is still in play right now. And all our emotions are going to be up and down. So I think we have to be very mindful. And yes, we are not talking about necessarily the X's and O's of this game, because who really cares that the Chicago Bears beat the Carolina Panthers 16-13, moving their record to 3-7. Carolina now 1-8. And now the draft board continues as we continue to stare down the draft board. Carolina at 1-8, the Bears at 3-7. The real important outcome of that game. But we're going to be breaking it down as Justin Fields probably will be back for that Detroit game after their 10-day layoff after this long stretch from Thursday Night Football. But an interesting moment. Let us know, though. Marvelous, you got any final thoughts about this this Bears Thursday night game?
Yeah, I mean, let's give Carolina a break. They did beat Houston. So, they got that going for them. But I think we've pretty much covered the bases on this. It's just a tough thing to figure out. I mean, maybe the answer is Jim Harbaugh as coach.
And that's what the public talked about on this episode. I'll tell you this much. I'll give you my prediction. I mentioned it on a quick blurb we had on this edition of the Sports Cubicle. Make sure you guys check that out in the archives. I do think Jim Harbaugh is going to the NFL. I do think the time is over. There's not even specifics if he can coach the playoff and national championship game. It's only the last 3 games, and we'll see how they play out for Michigan. But I do think he's heading to the NFL. I just don't think you can have Jim Harbaugh in the power position of head coach while you have Ryan Poles there, while you have Kevin Warren there, who Kevin Warren and Jim Harbaugh have their own history because of the Big Ten and Michigan and their standing just a few years ago. But also, let me just throw this out there, Marvelous. If the fans have to choose, and we have that weird thing that happens in sports, right? Who do you think Chicago fans are going to go and lean towards? Ryan Poles or Jim Harbaugh? You can't have that. You can't have that. There are 2 organizations that can afford that. The Las Vegas Raiders and the New England Patriots. Your guesses about Jim Harbaugh really fast.
Well, you're right. I mean, I think he's done at Michigan. And obviously, I think he'd really want a coaching position where he'd have more power than here. That's what I feel. And I don't know if such a position exists. So maybe you could settle for this one.
Let's keep things rolling here. We want to know your thoughts about the Bears finding a way to beat Carolina, getting another victory, the 3rd one of the season. They are now 3-7. They beat Carolina 16-13. We're on Twitter at Sports Cubicle TV. He's the marvelous one, Dan Marver. I'm Mike Mercado.